In your chess games, especially in 960 games, have you ever felt like your play is shaky? Why does every position feel weak? This limits you from playing a clean game, and your opponent jumps in and harasses your position. But fear not, this video will be life-changing if you're below 2000 elo. You'll finally know the key concept you're missing: play in the center. We'll explain how to use pieces and pawns in the center to build up your position. 99% of players below 2000 elo get this wrong. Master this, and you'll win more consistently. Pay attention, you'll become magnesium calcium. In today's video, I'm going to talk about two types of center play: a piece center and a pawn center. Let's begin with a pawn center. This is a recent game I played with my friend, Toivo Chess. He is also a YouTuber, and I would encourage you to check out his channel. He uploads chess games daily. So this game is a clear example of how I outplayed him, seeing that he's actually 300 points lower rated than me, even in 960. It's important to show your consistency and your stability in your play. When you play in the center, it's actually helping you to do this, and then it's time to display that you're actually a better player than your opponent and win the game in some fashion. But let me lead you through the game, and I hope you can learn something. So since this is a 960 position, I open up with c4, opening up two pieces. If you still haven't watched the first episode of my 960 tutorials, I would really encourage you to take a look at it, because if you don't, you would mess up early in the first few moves and get a worse position. So after c4, knight g6, great moves. d4, c6, knight d3, f6, f3. I'm planning to play e4 and grab hold of the entire center. Here my opponents strike back with e5. So the problem with e5 is that it's actually allowing me to play d5, e4. So here the engine suggests d5, another approach in the center. This stabilizes the center. The two pawns are walking into each other. So I first played knight g3, a flexible move, and after knight h4, an attacking move, which is kind of slightly difficult for me to defend, because either knight e1 or rook f2 is very awkward. I just entirely missed that I can actually take, because I'm trying to focus on my development. So I just played queen d2. And the idea here, of course, is after knight takes g2, I just open up immediately with an extra tempo, and after he backed out. But here, he missed the chance, played g5, and I didn't blunder it this time, I just played d5. b5, an interesting and nice try, striking back at my center. And after takes, I'm not planning to take back, and I'm going to hop in here, use the pawn majority on my queen side, and hopefully he might play something like this. However, this did not happen as he took back this way. I didn't really capitalize on it immediately, but castles make sense as well. So surprisingly, I'm castling into pawn defense with only two pawns and the file in front of me entirely open. But this is safe. For what reason? Because of the stable center and the closed king side. Bishop c7 makes sense, and rook c1, just pinning, a simple move. So d6 here was played, and obviously in move. Quick quiz: what is the first thing you notice with the pawn move d6? If you said c6 and e6, congratulations. Every time a pawn moves, always look at what squares it's not guarding after it moves. And in this case, I can capitalize on c6 immediately with knight b4 and knight c6. I didn't play it immediately. I first played a4. Also a great idea. Rook a3, rook c3, capitalizing on this style. And here he played queen d7. I immediately put knight b4 back in. And here he just played knight h3 and knight g7, which is two inaccurate moves in a row. He basically just missed my idea of knight c6, king e8, and pawn takes. So after knight f4, I knew I was very much close to winning. The idea is simple here. Just rook a7, and after takes, b6, b7, b8. Since the stable center, there cannot be any play down the center, and since the play on the king side is slowed down because of this solid and immovable pawn structure, king side attack would be way too slow, and my king and my center is absolutely safe, so I'm free to just push three pawn moves in a row. And indeed, after bishop d3, h5, rook a7, bishop a7, h4 is way too late, and I just moved away. Bishop f7, still no progress. b6, bishop d8, and I just takes. And after queen takes, here, threatens rook c8, threatens b8 queen, it just can't be stopped. In this game, it's a great example of how my center benefited me greatly. As I mentioned, even in the introduction, the center is the most important concept for stabilizing your position. Because if you have a stable center, there cannot be play down the center, and especially when you have some extra space and your pawns are controlling key squares, it can always slow down the attack on the opposite flank that you're defending on as well. So this is basically what a pawn center looks like. And in case you're wondering, what should I do against the pawn center? I have a video in my series about pawn play in the opening as well. In case you haven't looked at it yet, please take a look. So the classic idea here, even though I'm not saying right now because it's already way too late, is attacking either the front of the pawn chain, the bottom of the pawn chain, or the middle of the pawn chain. This might sound illogical, but imagine if there's four pawns here. h3 would make sense now. So in this case, there cannot be a pawn attacking the front of the pawn chain. So a common response here would be F5 to put pressure on E4. Imagine after takes, if I can trade off the bishop somehow and get the pawn over here, it's an entirely different story. Even though, honestly, this is already way too late, but bishop B6 might still be a chance, you know? So this is how you should play and form a powerful pawn center. And in case you're getting pawn centered, you should know how to counter it as well. Now let's take a look at another example, a piece center. This time, the game was played by two grandmasters, Levon Aronian and Vladimir Fedoseev. I wouldn't go into the opening specifically, but look at this play here for black. So black did a great job here, and this is what you can call a piece center. You've got pieces in the center, or near the center, or ready to go into the center, and it is causing some pressure down the center. Because for piece centers, it's much different compared to pawn centers. There's more of a flexible, complex, and liquidated structure that there can always be progress in. For example, e4 here. And then bishop c7, bishop to e5 would make sense. Knight c5 would make sense in case of c3, d4 for white. And knight c4 would make sense at certain times in case of castles, and then king b1 or something similar. So piece centers are basically getting your pieces active, and it can help you attack. But here, Levon Aronian did a great job, which is countering a piece center with a pawn center. Now you might ask, how can I actually form a pawn center with only one pawn in the center? Let me show you. Here this move was played, and you can actually already begin to anticipate the knight move or the bishop move into e4. And the purpose of that is that after captures, I capture with this, and I double my rooks on the d file, use the active bishop on g1, and bring my queen in, use my knight to pressure some squares, and I would have a genuinely good position. And after bishop b4, some progress was made, takes, the knight came in, and after some time, c5 was played. So now a pawn center has basically formed. This pawn controls key squares, stops c6. Pawn movement here would not be possible. This pawn is blocked, so pawn movement for the entire black position is entirely stagnated. The only pawn movement here that is possible is controlled in white's hands, and in case white does not want to play it yet, it will not be played. So here, again, it's capitalization when you have a pawn center. Also, a good rule of thumb I mentioned in my pawn play episode is that you attack on the direction of your pawn chain. So here the knight is actually working as a pawn, blocking this pawn, even though it also controls these key squares. And so since this is the way your pawn chain is pointing, you should prepare for g5. Indeed, in a few moves, this is actually played. After king h8 takes, d5 was played, and the position was furthermore blasted open. After takes, here, a simple fork wins a piece, and the game proceeds to be cleanly won by Levon Aronian. And look at this fun tactic here. Black went for this final trick, but surprise, queen c2. If takes, the move here is rook c8. The threat is over here. In case you try to defend it, there actually isn't even a good square. White basically just played in the center with correct piece and pawns, just stagnated the entire black position, and then proceeded to win. Very simple game.